What is up, Nets fans? Welcome to the Brooklyn Buzz. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, my guy, Jac Manuell. Jac, what's up?
Center battle time, Nick.
Center battle. We are talking DeAndre Jordan, Jarrett Allen, player previews. Before we get started, though, quick reminder, you can find the Buzz on iTunes, Block Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, NetsRepublic.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. Also head to Design/Off the Glass. Grab yourself a Brooklyn Buzz t-shirt with discount code OTG5. And also, we will be running a coupon code for you for FOCO. Buy 2 Nets items and get 10% off using OTG Nets. But, Jac, we're talking centers today. Who do you want to start with, DeAndre or Jarrett?
Yeah, I mean, in the order that I have done when I've we look at strengths, weaknesses, and everything else, Nick, I've done Allen Jordan because when we get to starters, and we spoke about it on the season preview as well, I believe Allen should start, as do the people on Twitter when I put out the poll. Everyone is on the Jarrett Allen bandwagon, so let's go with the Fro.
Let's go with the Fro. And obviously last year, another very nice season for Jarrett Allen, developing 10.9 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 59% from the field, and 13% from three, 70% from the free throw line, and 1.5 blocks. Jac, what did you think of last year?
He had a really nice season, Nick, and I think that suddenly we should make a T-shirt. Let's go with the Fro and have like a picture of Jarrett Allen on it. Let's get the design team on that one at dsgandtree.com. But his highlights were aplenty. The blocks on every single superstar. You were just denied. If you were Giannis, if you were LeBron James, if you were Blake Griffin, it happened to you on more than one occasion. Jarrett Allen had a sensational season and showed some growth in some key areas. And a guy like Ed Davis as a sort of mentor for him really had an impact, and really happy with the season that Jarrett Allen had as a sophomore.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people probably put too big of expectations for him to take a bigger jump, but I thought the jump he made last year was very solid and continues his progression. And I think we'd both say last year was a success for Jarrett.
It certainly was. Jarrett, he was a good rebounder defender. He solidified himself as a starter despite being only a second-year player. But it was disappointing that he couldn't obviously perform against the game's biggest guys, Joel Embiid, and he would get sort of schooled in the post a little bit. And I always like to provide it both ways.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's an area we'll talk about in a little bit. But biggest strengths of Jarrett Allen's game?
Yeah, the biggest strength of Jarrett Allen's game for me are his deft touch around the rim, his rim running in general, blocks, pick and roll offense, his man-to-man defense with the smaller players. He's a really good free throw shooter for a big guy, and he provides some really nice verticality as well.
Yeah, pretty much everything you had, I would just throw in there. He's extremely good at doing the slip screens where he's faking out running a screen and then just jets to the rim. And he's so quick that most centers can't react in time. I think his help defense is good. I think he understands when to rotate. It's just that people don't have his back. You mentioned being able to defend smaller guys, and I just think his mobility is very good for his size and a solid passer. He's not an amazing passer, but he has the ability to make a pass that some centers honestly can't in the NBA.
Yeah, he's willing to pass. There's some times where he can turn the ball over a little bit, and that probably pertains to some of the weaknesses that I have for him. But he's a willing passer, which is a good thing.
100%. And he's a willing screener, too. Especially, I think last year you mentioned Ed Davis helping him. I think he improved in setting off-ball screens and understood the importance a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, what do you got weaknesses?
Obviously, physical strength. I don't think he's an elite rebounder for his position. I think you need to get in the double digits if you're a center. He can be careless with the ball in his hands at times. I think he can have probably too many turnovers for a guy who has a low usage. And I think sometimes he can be timid, for lack of a better term, at times in the offensive end, where you want him to just sort of take it in. He can sort of be a bit indecisive in that sort of nature. So maybe indecisive is probably a better word than timid.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to see him attempt to try to dunk on guys a little bit more. If you're able to block the best dunkers in the NBA, you probably can get high enough to dunk on some of these guys. But some of that comes with confidence and lack of physicality. And it makes you think about, I want to say it was against the Hawks last year where maybe it was John Collins or somebody in that team really aggravated him in the first 2 minutes, and he played at a different level the entire game. Getting Jarrett Allen to be fully engaged and locked in all the time, not to say that he's disengaged, but I think there's another gear that he's not always at. He can hit. And it's just not something we see consistently through 82 games, which is hard for a lot of players, but I think he can do that.
Yeah, I think he can too, especially heading into his third season.
Now, what improvements do you need to see this season?
Yeah, I think in terms of the improvements, it pertains to the weaknesses that we sort of spoke about. I think that taking the three ball a little more confidently, he has the mechanics to do so. And I saw him take one last night against the Raptors. I think he just needs in terms of a way of separating himself alongside DeAndre Jordan and, making the offense a little more versatile. I think that's an area he can improve on. I think in general, just the physicality. And in terms of how the sort of team can help him in that sort of regard, putting him in the lineups with guys like Levert and Dinwiddie, who he has that embedded chemistry with already. And I did see some really positive things last night from him and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, some really good lateral bounce passing to Jarrett Allen as a roller. So I really like their chemistry as well. So I think he's already got really good pick and roll chemistry. Challenging him against those dominant centers, not necessarily, just putting DeAndre out there and sort of, hiding him, giving Jarrett Allen, a few reps against him, because he's not going to get better unless he is being challenged against Embiid, Jokic, Davis, these sort of dudes. And they're giving him the chance to use a strength of his in his lateral quickness, giving him, not necessarily playing a switching style of defense. If Jarrett Allen gets caught on, a Kemba Walker or a LeBron James or whatever, don't make the switch. Let Jarrett Allen do that thing, because he's blocked, he's created steals on that quite consistently. And I think he has the confidence and area to do so there. He is an incredibly adept, lateral and athletic quick man for a guy who is 6'10", 6'11".
Yeah, no, Jack, you nailed it in pretty much all those points. And I think the improvements are pretty obvious, just like getting physically stronger and being able to deal with these bigger centers and adding to that offense. If he can add that three ball, we're not going to see a jump and all of a sudden he's going to start shooting 35%. But if you can get to a respectable number like 30%, that'd be a good start moving forward. And like you mentioned, playing with Kyrie, Karras, Spencer, these playmakers, even possibly Musa if he keeps developing further, and then getting him in some good lineups, some good spacing out there, and good matchups. I think you do want to test him a little bit, but also you don't want to leave him out there if he's getting abused. And now the Nets have that luxury to go to DeAndre possibly a little bit more. So it should be a really good year for him, and I think there's a real chance for him to make a lot of the improvements we expect.
Yeah, definitely. He's obviously still got so much potential and so much growth left in his game. He is still only in the infancy of his NBA career.
Now, what's his role in this team going to be, starter or bench player?
It's funny. I did this doc last week or early this week, and I had Allen as a bench player. And then, a few days later, I have him as a starter. He is a starter for me right now. And I think Jordan will be a bench player. But I don't think we can solidify and say it as a blanket statement. Jordan only bench player, Jarrett Allen only a starter. I think that this will change throughout the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a starter going in. He has an opportunity to maintain that position, but DeAndre obviously could jump in, being the veteran and doing some things better than him. Now,
Definitely.
Where do you see his minutes being at this season?
Yeah, I'm giving him 25 or 26 minutes.
I went with 26 here. I could see maybe up to 27, but I also could see down to 25 too. I think his minutes can fluctuate, where in seasons past, I mean, like, you knew he was getting his minutes, but now it's like, hey, DeAndre might come in, really engage and do some things really well, and depending on the matchup, he might steal those minutes for that night.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a game of, what fits best for the occasion. What is the matchup like? What is happening in the game? What do we need? Do we need the strengths of Jarrett Allen out there to sort of, counter whatever a team is throwing at us? Or do we need, the maturity of a veteran in DeAndre Jordan to play a few extra minutes here and there? I think that when we go through minute logs at some point throughout the season and we maybe revisit some of these predictions, it'll be interesting to sort of see, because I could easily see us being way off in a lot of these sort of things. But Jarrett Allen, I think a lot of people were, skeptical about the DeAndre Jordan signing, but I think that right now, it doesn't seem to be affecting Jarrett Allen in any sort of negative capacity. He's still motivated. He gets along with DeAndre. He's still got the chemistry. His skill set is still good. I don't think it's going to affect him adversely. I think that if we weren't to have a DeAndre Jordan and we were to keep saying Ed Davis or have another sort of backup center, maybe we would see a larger jump from Jarrett Allen, but maybe he's not ready for that at the same time. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal.
And maybe DeAndre is pushing him further. You know what I mean? I think there's pros and cons to any situation like that. So if I said the one I feel the least confident about in terms of minutes we've done so far, it's probably Jarrett Allen and DeAndre, who we'll talk about later. But usage-wise, would you say it's pretty much going to be the same as last year or right in that area?
Yep, 15%.
Yep. All right. Now, stat line.
Yeah, I'm going to go 12 points, 9 rebounds, 1.5 assists, just a shade under 60% from the field, and 72% from the free throw line.
What do you got those blocks looking like?
I'm going to give him, let's give him the same. I'm going to give him 1.5, 1.6.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping he'll take a little bit of a jump in the block area, and I think maybe having some better defenders. So I'm going to hit him up with it at 1.8, but the rest of the stats are pretty much the same. You're looking 11 points, 9 rebounds. The assists are going to stay around the same. Field goal percentage, free throw percentage. I think everything will almost be similar to last season. Not maybe because of a reduced role to an extent, but just because there's not really a ton of area for him to improve on. That's just like dramatically going to pop off on a stat sheet.
Yeah, I think that if you're looking at one area, it's the 3-point sort of percentage. That's sort of what separates you. And I think that in the comparison that I'll make to him in terms of where he'll be at the end of the season, it sort of relates to that specifically.
All right, well, hit us.
So for me, I'm hoping that Allen can push himself to near Miles Turner sort of levels of play and respectability within the league. Miles Turner, owning that sort of contract extension a couple of seasons ago, 4 years, $72 million. I think that's the ceiling that Jarrett Allen will get. I don't think he's going to get near that at this point in time. But Miles Turner is, it was somewhat of a travesty that he wasn't in the all-defensive teams, seeing as he was one of the best defensive players in the entire NBA. I think when I was speaking with Corey and you guys before, I had him third, fourth, fifth as one of the fifth best defenders across the league overall. And Miles Turner is a dominant defender. Jarrett Allen isn't a dominant defender just yet. And Miles Turner has a really nice offensive game, can confidently hit the three ball. Funnily enough, they're from the same college too. So for me, I think that's the comp that I like the most for a guy like Jarrett Allen. Obviously, there is a little more finesse to Jarrett Allen's game, a little bit more sort of touch and that sort of thing in comparison to Miles Turner. But I think that's a comp that, if he were to get to the level of Miles Turner is at right now, I would be very, very happy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a very nice comparison. Obviously, Turner's jump shot was further ahead when he came to the league, but hopefully Jared could get at least close to that level. But defensively, you really love what you see from Miles Turner, especially in that pick and roll defense. He is very good, and he has that switch ability to go on to smaller defenders. But what's the big question for Jared Allen this year?
Before we get to that, Nick, I sort of alluded to contract sort of thing. A season before he is due an extension. What contract would you give Jarrett Allen?
That's a tough one. I mean, it depends a little bit too on like what the Nets think his ceiling is. I don't think you give him more than Karis LeVert, and you probably give him around the same maybe as Spencer Dinwiddie. I would
Okay.
think maybe, or maybe in between those two deals, but a lot can change in 1 year.
Yeah, when I was sort of thinking about this question before I came up with it, obviously the high end potential is Miles Turner, but then I looked at a sort of bargain basement contract for a guy like Yusuf Nurkic, who is a better player and a better center than Jarrett Allen is right now in terms of what he provides a team. But Yusuf Nurkic got 448, and if you were to look at years and annual value. I think Spencer Dinwiddie is a better player. I think that if you're looking at the early 10, 11 sort of $1 million range for a guy like Jarrett Allen, because at the same time with these contracts, you're paying for the first sort of extension. You're paying for potential as well as what they can do for you right now. So obviously you might back end it, you might front end it, but I think he could get anywhere up to maybe a $15 million annual raise. But I think anywhere from 9 to 15 is that sort of range where I would probably look at him.
Yeah, and if I had to like single it down, I think 11 to 14 is probably the most likely one as of right now. Because like you said, you're slightly overpaying because you're expecting improvements. It's just how much is he going to improve, especially with the situation they're in. But also the Nets aren't going to be in an area where they can afford to lose players. And even if they do re-sign a guy, they might like to move him in the future because just of the cap situation they'll be in with KD and Kyrie on the roster.
Yeah.
Now, any other questions on Jared Allen we need to touch on?
Yeah, for me, obviously, it's the one. Can he hold his own against the big boys,
Yep.
Joel Embiid, all that sort of thing? And I think in terms of how it relates to DeAndre Jordan, what's the minutes clutch going to be? Who's going to start? Who's going to close? So those are the sort of questions that relate to both of them. But I guess I have some more individual questions for DeAndre too when we get to him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just Jared Allen improving against bigger centers is going to be key. If he can just take a stride there, he doesn't need to be elite, he doesn't need to be amazing, but at least be solid and competent. Where last year he would just get abused at times. That just can't happen again this season with the aspirations the Nets have as a team. Now moving to DeAndre, we'll look back at last season real quick. 11 points per game, 13 rebounds, over 2 assists, just over 1 block, 64% from the field, and 70% from the free throw line. What'd you like about DeAndre last year?
DeAndre is one of the best rebounders in the game, and he's going to be that for as long as he is wearing a NBA uniform. he just knows how to get boards. He can be a bit selfish in that regard. I remember, him having a little bit of a, not necessarily, let's go with a disagreement with Luka when he was sort of took a rebound from him. He sort of does that a little bit too much, but I've seen it lesser from him. I know I saw Rodion's really sort of snatch a rebound because that's how he sort of rebounds. So I think that if DeAndre cares a little bit less about his numbers, I think that's going to be a positive sort of thing. But at the same time, you just let the guy get the rebound. It's not that big of a deal. So I think he's a great rebounder. I think he's an underrated teammate. I think, Mitchell Robinson would say some good things about him. And I think that, when I was looking at video for him, he puts up buckets. He knows how to pass well. When I was doing the video breakdown for netsrepublic.com, he is an incredible passer to cutting players. And, the timing of his passes in terms of, when he hits them and how to hit them, he just has this innate ability to do so, even though he's not ever going to average 5 assists per game, but he is a very solid passer. So DeAndre Jordan, and I think what we sort of saw from him last season, I think you could almost call an aberration and sort of put it off the radar in terms of the impact that he has, because he didn't impact teams beyond, box score and rebounding sort of numbers. And I think he's going to impact, or at least hopefully impact, this Nets team heading into the 19-20 season.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. And I think just to summarize some of the things you said in terms of the passing is he's just an experienced basketball player. He's been in the NBA for a while now. He's a true veteran, and he can provide values to guys, not only on the court, but you mentioned the leadership. And I think he's going to play a pivotal role, especially already having prior relationships with KD and Kyrie. And like I mentioned, having that experience in the league. But that essentially covers our strengths. Is there anything else you'd want to throw in there?
Yeah, I think for strengths, we sort of touched on them, I guess, a little bit there, Nick. He passing the cutters, dominant rebounder. He's dunking, his verticality. Love his size, love his free throw shooting. He's always leading the league in field goal percentage. Good teammate. He knows his limitations, his quality of shots. He has strength as a sort of, and strength and size, like you mentioned. And for those that haven't seen it yet, for those, in terms of looking at his free throw numbers, did a sort of mini thread on how he sort of improved. And I guess I can explain it on the podcast as well. He's jumped 10%, over the last sort of 3 seasons, from 48% in 17-18 to 70% at the end of the 18-19 sort of season, where his mechanics look perfect. He knows what he's doing, but that's the sort of least thing that's sort of impacting him. He is really engaging in terms of another player. So he sort of, and I had, funnily enough, like a doctor, a neuroscientist or whatever, comment on it. It's just like, that sort of affects the neural pathways. He's doing the right thing in terms of engaging in another sort of stimulus, so he doesn't think about it. Because when you're doing those fine motor skills like putting, like free throw shooting, you don't want to think about what your body is doing. You want to just do it, because everyone knows how to hit a free throw shot for the most part. It's generally the mental aspect of it that sort of prevents you from being the best that you can. And he sort of will always speak to a teammate. He's always just like, oh, who you got on defense? And I saw it again last night. Nwaba was at the box, within the paint under the box, getting the rebound, and he's like to Nwaba, and Nwaba will just like point to someone or say someone's name. And it showed tremendous growth, and I really respect that. And I think and the reason why I got so much sort of traction was because a lot of people know it, but it shows that a guy that's put in work into a part of his game that is incredibly important for us. And I think it's underrated, a skill for a center, is to be able to hit those free throws, because they're going to get there. They're going to get hacked when they're in the pick and roll. They're going to get hit on the arms every now and then. So to have two guys who are at that late 60s, early sort of 70s sort of range in Allen and Jordan, I respect the growth. And it's a really fascinating thread for those that haven't checked it, at the JMNJBT.
Make sure you follow Jack, obviously dropping great threads all season long with film, and now obviously breaking down free throws. So man of all traits. But it was very interesting to see that, though. And it makes a lot of sense. Like when you're dealing with something in a pressure situation, some small little things can just kind of help take your focus off and alleviate some of that pressure. But you pretty much covered all the strengths there. I'm really looking forward to see what DeAndre can do, kind of rejuvenate it in Brooklyn with his friends. On the weaknesses, what do you got?
I've had impacting beyond the box score, his engagement on both ends, and I guess just that selfishness that I sort of spoke to and alluded to in terms of just getting his own numbers. Can he just look beyond that and just want to make an impact and do what's best for the team, which I think he can.
Yeah, and obviously a little bit limited on offense. Not quite as athletic as he once was. Still can get above the rim, though, obviously. But you pretty much nailed everything. We didn't touch on this before. Would you say last year was a disappointment for DeAndre?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I would agree. And you pretty much hit it ahead when you mentioned not impacting the game, just impacting the box score, which is not what you want for a player on a winning team.
Yeah.
Now, areas he needs to improve this season.
Yeah, I think areas he needs to improve, and in terms of how he can sort of be engaged and get the most out of him from the team, is just looking at what is best for the team and how he can provide their impacting, being a sort of mentor, sort of like player for Jarrett Allen, and in terms of getting the most out of him within the team, just throw him in the pick and roll because when running through plays, pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, he just has insane verticality. He knows how to finish. With Spencer Dinwiddie will throw some insane vertical, passes, and DeAndre will somehow find them. We've seen him before be on those highlight reels. I think that there's a potential that he could do that again this season because he's having that fun. He's with two of his best friends, and I think that the areas we spoke about, he already is what he is as a player, so there aren't necessarily any improvements he can sort of make beyond the sort of intangibles. Running some plays through him, including those ATO sort of plays and those elbow plays where he has the ball in his hands and he's passing it to some cutters. Already seen that a little bit in China and stuff, which is sort of good. And then I think as a coach, Kenny can challenge him to be great on both ends, to be a leader in that sort of aspect. So a lot of the stuff is sort of obviously on-court stuff, but then it's sort of the intangibles that help take you from being a good player to a really impactful and great player.
Yeah, a lot of the mental aspect here, like you said, just bring it a higher energy level, more effort, more engagement, being a leader and providing the team what it needs. And like you said, similar to Jarrett Allen, get him in the good matchups, get him with some good passers and creators like Kyrie, Spencer, and Karras, and let him live in that pick and roll because we mentioned his size. Like he sets the screen and he's creating a lot of space because he's just a big human.
He is. He's a large man.
Now, his role on the team, obviously, we talked Jarrett earlier, and we had Jarrett starting, so that would put DeAndre at the bench. Like we mentioned, these roles can flip flop between the two. We're not ready to set this in stone, but where would you have DeAndre's minutes at?
I would have him at 22 or 23.
Yep, I have 23 or 24, and people will be like, "Well, you had Jarrett at 26 and 24. That's 50 minutes." But you got to remember, people are going to miss games. They're going to play more minutes in this game than they will in the other game, so it'll all kind of even out by the end of the season.
Yes, it will.
Usage rate, pretty much the same with Jarrett, the same as last season, the same as pretty much all DeAndre's career.
Yep, 15% is the exact same number as I had for Jarrett Allen.
Now, predictions on the stat line.
Yeah, I'm going to give him 12 points, 13 boards, 2.5 assists, 65% from the field, 68% from the free throw line, and I'm going to give him 1.1 blocks.
Okay, I went with 10 points, 11 rebounds, around the same assists, same thing in field goal percentages like the previous seasons, above 60%. He's going to make his shots. Free throw, hopefully, he can stay at that 70% mark. And block-wise, I'm hoping he can pick it up maybe to like a 1.4.
Okay. Now, I think that just because the area that I think it's always going to be up there for him is rebounding because he craves those boards, he eats those boards. So it's just like an Ed Davis-like, but in a different sort of fashion. I think Ed Davis is probably a better offensive rebounder, but DeAndre Jordan as a defensive rebounder has him there.
Yeah, and hopefully it has a positive impact on the transition game, which we mentioned on the team preview. But what's the big question for DeAndre Jordan this season?
Yeah, for me, it's, can he redeem the value of his contract? The contract obviously is lofty, 4 years, $40 million. A lot of people are like, well, DeAndre Jordan didn't deserve that, but, Kyrie took unders, as did KD. And hopefully, if he is what I think he can be at the end of the season, a league best as a rebounder or in that top sort of three within the field goal percentage, and then re-engage with the defensive end. If he averages 1.4 blocks, I'll be incredibly happy. Then, he is going to redeem that value. He is going to repay the faith that the Nets have shown in him.
And I think pretty much what we touched on, if he can just get back to impacting basketball in a positive way, impact winning and creating winning situations for his teammates, what he has the ability to do, and like we talked about, the weaknesses are the mental aspect, being engaged, getting that focus up, and just getting back to being a very good defensive player. This is a guy that was in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, year in and year out, because he was so good on that end of the floor.
Yeah, and I think that he may not ever reach those heights again, but he can go back to a level there which has him at least above average.
Now, Jack, any other things you want to touch on between DeAndre or Jarrett?
No, I'm just really looking forward to seeing these guys out on the court and in terms of what they can provide. I think that both of them are going to provide us highlights in different sort of aspects. I'm hoping for some massive DeAndre dunks and some massive, Jarrett Allen blocks, and then hopefully that, it is a strength of ours. I think that when we spoke about strengths and weaknesses on the team preview pod, our center rotation is damn good. As a third center, Nicholas Claxton is that young sort of kid coming through. I think it's really sort of positive, and I'm really excited to see what our 5 position and how they impact the game for us. Hopefully for a nice little playoff push.
And it's interesting, too, because I would say the skill sets between Jarrett Allen and DeAndre Jordan are more similar than Jarrett Allen and Ed Davis. So offensively, the changes don't happen, where we mentioned this on a couple shows, I think, over the summer. Ed Davis obviously was great defensively, great rebounder, but he did not provide you any vertical spacing on the pick and roll. He set you a good screen, created space, but he wasn't much of an option rolling to the rim unless it was a wide open dunk or layup.
Yeah, and he's going to do some really nice things in Utah. But yeah, I think that in terms of offensively and schematically, both of these guys have some really nice verticality to them when we were speaking about those strengths of theirs. And I think that we can look to them, and I think that they are both starting caliber players at the center position within this league. It's whether who gains the ascendancy and on what night which one is doing the most for you. And I think it's almost a luxury to have. If Jarrett Allen isn't producing, DeAndre, you get out there. Or if DeAndre isn't engaged enough, it's just like, all right, well, we're going to yank here. And hopefully that brings the best out of both of them.
And it also helps, centers get in foul trouble. It just happens because they're defending the rim, and it's, they're going to get called for plays, attempting to make a block or whatever it is. And having both these guys and then swapping them out and not really changing your scheme that much. Obviously, certain guys are going to have pros and cons to their game, like we mentioned on the show, but I think it'll help Kenny and help the rest of the team. So I'm looking forward to that. And like you said, it's a real strength, center and point guard. Very good for the Nets. But as always, Jack, a pleasure talking Nets with you. Thank everybody for listening. You can find us on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, YouTube, and NetsRepublic.com.